All right, everyone, thank you so much for attending the NNLM National Center for Data Services Showcase. This is a Zoom webinar, so attendees are muted and your cameras are turned off. To ask a question, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. I'm putting some information in the chat. Oh, I've been beat to it, so we're good. This session will run from 1:15 to 2:15 Eastern time, with the last 15 minutes or so for Q&A, and it will include 6 live presentations, followed by the poster session, which comes after us. Thank you in the chat. Please indicate if you have a question, indicate who your question is addressed to for the end. Feel free to post them in the chat, but we will save answering all the questions during the Q&A at the end. Also, you can reach out to any of the presenters in Whova with any additional questions that you might have. In terms of the code of conduct, the Research Data and Access Preservation Summit organizers are committed to providing an environment where all attendees can participate fully in the program and activities without fear of harassment or discrimination. And that includes discriminatory behavior of any kind. The Code of Conduct helper has been mentioned in the chat, which is Tisha Mintage, and you may direct message them in Whova if you need assistance. They can give you the Code of Conduct email address or the link to the incident report form if needed. Okay, so the first presenter is myself. We will also hear from the interns who participated in the most recent, the only internship program we've had so far. I will mention that we have one coming up and applications are actually open until the April 1st. So I'll go ahead and start my presentation, and after me will be Deb. Again, thank you all for coming. Hopefully you're able to see my screen. If not, please let me know. I am able to see chat. All right. So I wanted to give a quick, brief overview of who we are at NCDS. So we are the National Center for Data Services. We are part of the National Institutes of Health, in that one of those institutes is the National Library of Medicine. And the outreach arm of the National Library of Medicine is called the Network of the National Library of Medicine, or NNLM, which is composed of 7 regional medical libraries, 4 national offices, and 4 centers, including ourselves. The NCDS, the National Center for Data Services, focuses on developing the capacity for data science and the delivery of data services in the health information community. We offer trainings from beginner level to more advanced, as well as resources and they're all free and available for anyone to make use of. Today, I'm talking about the internship that we have over the summer. This internship was developed in order for health professionals to be able to provide, health information professionals to be able to provide data services, as well as the EDI component of capitalizing on providing those opportunities for students of color. So this internship offers practical experience of working on structured data-related projects, and they get the skills that they need to be competitive for data librarian positions. Currently, it is remote, so all of the summer 2022 people who will be speaking, as well as the upcoming summer 2023 participants, are virtual, and it is a 10-week program paying at $20 an hour, 10 hours a week. The priorities for the internship this past summer and going forward are on understanding how to work with data or curate data, since those are kind of the main areas of data services within libraries. And we participated in the Leading the Charge, Advancing the Recruitment, Retention, and Inclusion of People of Color within the Library and Information Science Field grant program, whose PI, Tina Rollins, who's the director of Harvey Library at Hampton University, is all about the initiative for developing evidence-based EDI initiatives, which we fall under. And so we've worked with a EDI consultant and the grant team on the development of the internship in order to make strides that are going to be effective for recruitment, retention, and experience for our internship. We have several people here today, and I have Starred who's speaking. We had 38 applicants and 9 who were accepted into the program, which is about a 24% acceptance rate. We did end up with 8 participants, as one had a employment conflict where they were not able to accept outside income. Again, I mentioned the 4 who are starred here are presenting today, and we had other interns, including some who are here today, who presented at DLF Forum. We also had an accepted presentation at JCLC, which unfortunately was canceled and rescheduled due to a hurricane, and we were no longer able to make the new date. Some of the accomplishments of our interns are provided below. And we also have some takeaways. So we had pre and post surveys of our internship, and this kind of is overwhelming of a bar chart, but you can see that the white bars represent the results from all of the respondents pre-evaluation. So since less than half completed the post-eval, I've also shown in gray the pre-eval responses from just those individuals who answered both times. The first set of clusters bars shows how they rated their interest in going into data librarianship from 1 to 10. In the pre-eval, we had 1 person each rating it at a 4, 7, and 8, 2 rated it at a 9, and 2 rated it at a 10. The rest of the clustered bars show comfort with the various components of data literacy before and after the internship. This includes the first category, which is data cleaning and data wrangling. Second, which is creating data visualizations. Third, conducting analyses. Fourth, data curation. Fifth, coding and using APIs. And lastly, working with relational databases. For both the full group or the subgroup, they rank the importance of networking, hands-on learning, and learning new things or learning more higher in the post-evaluation. Half of the interns completed our anonymous satisfaction survey. It was given to them completely separate from all of the other feedback that they provided in order for it to be anonymous. And we also received input from their check-ins, final presentations, and reports. Some areas for improvement where some wanted more interaction with one another. People were grouped into project groups and may have had more ability to talk to one another and less ability to talk to the other interns that were working on other projects. Also, we had quite a laborious onboarding process. Unfortunately, NYU Langone Health, a healthcare organization, hires interns in the same way they hire everyone. So it is like tuberculosis testing, turning in like your COVID vaccinations and everything, even if you're working remote. So it was quite a process. And then they also had to log into a VPN to check in and check out. So we are completely changing our hiring process based on that. But you can see some of the comments that they've left that kind of indicate some of these points that I've made. In terms of areas of success, all respondents but one shows that they were very satisfied with the overall satisfaction of this program. They were very happy with the mentor interactions. They had a high interest level in what the trainings that we offered and the support that was there for their projects. Many appreciated the skills that they were able to take away, as well as the opportunity for professional development by presenting at conferences and the structure of the program. Year 2 plans are in the works, and we are planning to, grow the structure of the program. As I mentioned, we are still working with Hampton University, and a lot of that has helped with our recruitment efforts. We have already surpassed the number of applicants that we received last year, which we already thought was high, and so we've actually recruited more external reviewers. I'll also mention that our team, our external reviewers, and pretty much everyone along the process of our internship are from diverse ethnic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, and pretty much every category that you can count. And we have a publication about our recruitment process, hopefully coming out soon, that we have submitted to a journal. In terms of the changes we plan to make, I mentioned our hiring process changing. And also we are growing the internship. So we have 12 interns spots this year rather than 9. And we're going to make opportunities more for interns to be able to interact with one another more so than they did last year. That's really all that I'm going to say in order to make time for our next speaker. So I will go ahead and stop sharing and mute myself in order for the interns to speak about their own experience.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dev Wilder. I am trying to get my life together so that I can share my screen. Here we go. Okay. I believe everyone can see that. All right. All right. Hello. Thank you all for your time today. It's great to be here with you all and to connect virtually. My name is Deb Wilder, and I'm a second-year graduating student in the MLIS program at the University of Washington, Seattle. And today I'll be sharing with you about my experience as an intern of the first cohort of the National Center for Data Services Data Internship Program. There we go. I wanted to start off with going a little bit more in depth about NCDS. And on top of what Peace was saying and what they do. So they're part of NNLM, and they coordinate with other NNLM regions, offices, and centers to provide training and resources to increase data science capacity among information professionals in alignment with the NLM strategic plan. And this year they pioneered their data internship program, which focused on introducing students from historically excluded racial and ethnic groups to data librarianship in a health sciences context. What interested me about this opportunity was the ability to work on a project as well as learn from professionals currently in the field about what is done and what they do specifically regarding data services. Coming from a background in biology, statistics, and research, in a general sense, it was important for me to bridge my interest in library and information science. But through this experience, I was able to meet and connect with a network of people in the field and in this center, as well as colleagues who come from different sorts of backgrounds, which ultimately helped in our collaboration process. For 10 weeks, NYU Langone Health hosted us, and we were able to work with the data services staff on an assigned project. My assignment was with the data evaluation project, which I will talk a little bit about later. And in addition to that, the entire cohort attended weekly sessions, a library carpentry, and had supplemental information about different aspects of data science, the data cycle, and librarianship careers. So some background information about the project. I was assigned to the Health Science Library and analyzed data from their Data Day series, Data Day to Day, that's a mouthful, where feedback was collected amongst participants via an optional survey of courses they offered from their library. And this was a free range project, so I chose to analyze the survey questions and response rate, as well as perform textual analysis on free response feedback. Upon being assigned to this project, I, as well as my group partner, Sylvia, who's not speaking today, but is absolutely phenomenal, had the opportunity to talk with designers and the administrators of the survey used to collect data from the course participants and expand our knowledge about the instruments they use, as well as why their process was the way that it was. So a little bit about the methodology here. So this project gave me a chance to exercise my previous skills in the research method and analyzing data. And I can honestly say that this was one of the few times that I've had the opportunity to search for something on my own within existing data and investigate. Usually I'm the person who data is handed to with the story to create it and I make it happen, or I go through the entire process of research where I come up with a question, gather the data myself, analyze it, synthesize it, and then form a conclusion. But this was a great opportunity to expand my investigative skills and take another approach to evaluate another person's work and collection. And so it inspired me to continue methods of consulting and advisory, as well as how I can utilize that skill in my professional life. And so these are the steps that I took towards my project, and also the tools that I used. So this is a breakdown of what I thought about. And so I broke each question from the survey into levels of classification, which allowed me to understand the questions for what they were and how it compared to its response type and the type of data that would surface from that. This was valuable for me when writing out a methodology, because the clarity of definitions for used terminology is necessary in communicating intentions. I deduced 3 categories, which were identification, were asked, and more importantly, gauge what kind of data they were guiding respondents to receive. I currently work with an algorithmic literacy team and recently designed a survey for our research project. So I took the approach I did with this project and made it into a form of auditing for our created survey. And this helped a lot to reframe what was really important to us and what we wanted to dedicate the survey space to be, and what would be valuable for both the respondent and us as data collectors. So a little more palatable and nicely formatted version of the analysis I did of the question specifically. I created some visualizations to aid in my report. This first one demonstrates the question types, their classification and frequency. There were 20 questions asked, and most of them fell under explicit course evaluation, which I found important in evaluating the course questions because the majority focuses on the overall objective of the survey. And so of those 20, I noted 14 to understand the response types and the data that could be pulled from there. The 6 questions that were excluded came from the identification section, but they were not disregarded in the grand scheme of things, as I used them later in the project. So my next objective was to perform text analysis with hopes of creating a list of desired outline from participants who gave feedback. And I was able to accomplish this through a word map, word cloud, and word frequencies. And I used that with Voyant, I used that with RStudio, and also I used OpenRefine. This was an opportunity I took to talk with my mentors and provide recommendations about questions that could be amended or included. For example, without being interpretive, but being predictive, I suggested a question for the survey could be, what subjects or topics would be beneficial to your role, to encompass both aspects of personal and course evaluative data, as well as thinking about the future of courses and what is needed for participants. Once I was able to investigate trends further and separated out the different courses requested by different affiliates of NYU Langone Health, this was something I enjoyed doing, especially since I got the chance to see the trends. And as I noted in this slide, so I specifically saw within data analyst group was that they wished for training in Big Purple HPC, which is high performance computing. And in a role like this, I would investigate these things further in order to understand and adhere to the needs of participants. And this made me think about institution concentration as well. How big is your audience and how specific do you want to go? I met with a few individuals in the field who have done specialized services or role applicable data services and courses for their patrons, or a group they were responsible for. And so in the future, I would love to hone in on this aspect of a specialized service within librarianship and data services and take this into classrooms, research institutions, and any other spaces that can move beyond the foundation. So to wrap up, there were a lot of things that I learned from this experience and was just another stepping stone towards my future in library and information science. So some of the successes that I had, I was able to combine the skills that I already had within research, within statistics, and some of the programs I've been more familiar with, like RStudio. So they were very accepting of the skills that I came with, as well as helping me grow as a professional. In addition to that, I found out a whole bunch of new tools that I currently have stored on my search bar. So it's great to be able to not only use those now, but to use them in my or not to use them at that time, but use them now in my current profession and in my current work. and introduction to critical thinking in a new way. Like I was saying before, having information that's present to you and then finding out the questions within the data that already exists. Some of the challenges that exist was finding something to investigate. That was the hardest part beyond what was already known. Again, I was really great with coming up and conceptualizing ideas of something that, hasn't even been asked yet, but it really challenged my way of thinking. So I'm grateful for that. There was a somewhat limited data set to work with, but it was still challenging. And then understanding why that it was a limited data set. If you look at the years of when this data was collected, it was 2019 to 2020, or I believe to 2021. And so those were the years of the pandemic. Lots of things were happening and everything was online. So survey fatigue is very, very real. And I was a part of the group that experienced survey fatigue. So there are a lot of different influencing factors as to why data can be impacted. So some feedback, the enjoyments I had, it was structured very well. It was very accompanying to my schedule. I'm a very busy human being, so it was great to have that flexibility as well as the support overall. And then there was opportunity to participate and help in. So I was able to serve on a data carpentry workshop, and then not only that one, but another one later in the year. And so some improvements and suggestions, Peace already covered that a little bit, just method of logging time, and that had really nothing to do with NCDS, but it was still great even with that slight snafu. Always more time with the center and with the people, and just to be able to connect with my peers more, who I have done outside of this. So reflection, I had a lot more confidence in my skills that I currently had, that I had before, and now the ones that I've developed from this internship. In addition to that, with mentorship, I still email with the people that I was working with in NCDS now that I did back then. And then also opportunity, there was a space for creativity and ideation. I had a real misconstrued view as what creativity was. And so I doubted myself for a while that I wasn't creative, but someone told me that research is a form of creativity and it's all about the lens that you have on it. And so also I will always say that exposure is the greatest and most necessary gateway to education and learning. So I'm grateful to have had that and through this experience. Special thanks to the following people and also my data services interns. Here's my information if you'd like to contact me. Also, you can go through the website and find my information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deb. I'll also put your information in the chat so that folks can have it. Well done. I will pass the mic over to Loida. Pan. Excellent job, Loida. Thank you so much for your presentation. Again, so grateful to work with both Deb and Loida, and we have more greatness coming up. Our next presenter is Liliana Gonzalez. So I will go ahead and pass it on.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to pop in and say hi first, but I am going to keep my camera off because my internet is struggling. So let me just share my screen here. All right. So hi, my name is Liliana Gonzalez. I am a library science student at the University of Kentucky. Last summer, I did this internship with the National Center for Data Services, and I'm going to tell you all about it today. So a little bit about my initial interest. My undergraduate degree is actually in English writing, and my library background is largely within public library services. But I was always really interested in data services, which is why I gravitated toward this internship in the first place. I was seeking more ways to learn about what this meant in librarianship. And specifically, I wanted to find ways to become familiar with different data types, get a broader understanding of working with data, and learn about the data lifecycle. So for this project, I was paired with the Data Curation Network to select one of their projects for the summer. I worked alongside the interns Maria and Andrea, and Maria will be speaking right after me. We began with readings and viewings that allowed me to begin to understand what the Data Curation Network is all about and how librarianship fits into data curation and sharing. This was a really great introductory way to ease us into this space and help us figure out what we wanted to explore further. So to start the process, I met with Michaela Narlock, director of the DCN, and Shauna Taylor, project manager for the Association of Research Libraries, and they walked us through the potential project options that they had worked on creating alongside a pool of mentors. We were able to openly discuss the premise of each project, the general objective, and where these projects would potentially end up living after we worked on them. After this, we were allowed time to digest each of these possibilities on our own, and later had time for open discussions with them to make sure our interests were connected to the project options that we were presented with. So the project I selected was titled Translating the Curated Steps for Biomedical Data for Wider Audiences, specifically for faculty and graduate students. So to give you a super quick crash course on the curated steps, here's this handy checklist from the DCN. You start with checking files and reading any associated documentation. You then work to understand the data, or try to, in the case of a curator who didn't directly work on this project. You then request any missing information or changes, which is usually in the form of logs. Next, you work to augment the metadata for findability of the project. Then you transform your file formats for reuse and preservation. Next, you evaluate for fairness, which stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And finally, you document all your curation activities for record-keeping purposes. So again, my background is really in humanities and public libraries, and I think this gave me a good sense of appreciation for creating resources that are fair. And that's why I really chose this project, because I felt that it best aligned with my background and desire to carve a pathway for better access. So once we started on the project, pretty quickly, my mentors and I found that biomedical data was going to be a really overwhelmingly broad area to cover, especially during a 10-week internship. So we then shifted into translating the curated steps for clinical trials, so with a focus on making it for wider audiences. To begin this process, I needed to do two things. One, read through the curated steps to understand how they are implemented. And two, dive into information about clinical trials. So this rework allowed me to take it a little further than the initial title of my project. After diving into both of these topics, I was still feeling like I needed more direction for my scope. And I met with Shauna, Michaela, and two mentors who then became my leads for the project, Jen Dara and Sophia Lafferty-Hess, both from Duke University. I found that as I did more and more research into my topic, the document I was working in was really starting to resemble a curation primer. So we discussed this and the previously set outcomes for my project. And we all concluded that it would just work out better if I worked on creating a high-level clinical trials primer. So some outcomes of this was really that shifting toward a primer allowed me to look at other primer examples and really see which parts of those were applicable and relevant to my own. This really helped me to have just a starting foundation because I was feeling really lost in all this data. From there, I worked with all of my mentors to help keep me on the right track for this project. And throughout this work, I was able to gain a greater understanding about working with data and what the data cycle looks like in real projects. I think this process really helped me learn about real-world situations where projects like this are continuously revised as we continue working. In the very beginning stage of my project scope, I was worried that I had taken on too much. It just seemed like I had an endless amount of information at my hands and really no idea how to approach it and make something feasible out of it within my allotted time frame. But I found that my concerns mainly occurred at times when I was working by myself. During all regular check-in meetings and messages with Shauna and Michaela, I felt incredibly supported and validated in my struggles. And this helped me learn how to take a step back and accept when something was just not going to work. and then brainstorm with them, along with Jen and Sophia, to figure out what we could do with the time and information I had access to. This was also a lesson in the value of having a strong support system that will help you work through the typical anxieties that can come up when undertaking new projects on your own. As far as my output, by the end of the internship, I was proud to have reached a really good stopping point in my clinical trials primer that created a foundation for a later fully fleshed out primer. My rockstar mentors dedicated time beyond this internship to carry out the project with the help of external peer reviewers. The completed version of this project now lives in the DCN's GitHub as a clinical trials data primer. Some final thoughts on the internship. This is, goes without saying, but 10 weeks really flew by. It went by so quickly. Peace and my peers have touched on this a little already, but I wish I had connected a little more with my fellow interns during the program. But I do recognize that we all had pretty packed schedules. I was able to regularly see and hear updates within my DCN group of Maria and Andrea, but I only had a pretty vague sense of what the rest of my fellow interns were working on until I heard their final presentation. As a first-generation American and college student, I feel very fortunate to have found this opportunity. I think it would have been incredibly difficult to explore this without an internship like this available to me. I really enjoyed feeling that I was given a sense of control for how I wanted my project to turn out, while also receiving the right amount of guidance. The lessons and connections that this internship has provided me with are not taken lightly, and I will definitely carry these with me as I continue my path to librarianship. Thank you so much for listening. I will leave my email in the chat.
Thank you so much, Liliana. Okay, y'all, we have another speaker to continue this wonderful session. Maria Ortega Cuevas will be talking about working with DCN as well. All right.
Thank you, Peace. Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Arteaga Cuevas. I am one of the National Center for Data Services interns. And this summer, I had the opportunity to work alongside the NCDS and mentors from the Data Curation Network on my project, which was focused on data curation practices for researchers. Oops. Okay. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that Austin, Texas, where I'm presenting from, is located in the ancestral homelands of the Jumanoes, Tonkawa, Lipan Apache, Coahuiltecan, and Comanche, as well as all Indigenous people and communities who have lived here and continue to live here since time immemorial. A little background about myself. I am a second-year MLIS candidate at the University of Washington, and I intend to graduate in the spring of 2024. The goal of this internship was to provide practical experiences to interns that include the soft and hard skills needed to enter data librarian positions, including working on a team, understanding the data lifecycle, and working with data. When starting this internship, I was interested in a project that allowed me to follow the data lifecycle from acquiring the data to curating it and finally sharing it. And the first couple of weeks of the internship were all about settling into our new teams, getting to know each other, and selecting our projects. The team that I was working with was the Data Curation Network. The Data Curation Network are a growing group of data curators from various disciplines who want to help and empower researchers make advances in data curation and continue to develop professionally. Michaela, the director of the DCN, and Shauna Taylor, who works with ARL as a project manager, were our project leads. My mentors were DCN curators Scout Calvert, Winkels, and Jen Dara. When it came time to project selection, I chose the project titled Create a Data Curation Primer Template for faculty, researcher audiences, and Learn GitHub. My research question ended up being, what data curation strategies should researchers use as they are collecting and revising data in order to ensure fair standards are maintained? So the evolution of my project. At first, my project entailed creating a primer template. It was meant to be an outline, and the information for the primer template already existed within other DCN primers. So the goal was to rework what was already known for data curators to accommodate a researcher or faculty audience. After the internship's completion, my primer actually went through internal peer review, and there were major structural changes to the primer template that Michaela and Shauna co-authored. And then, after the peer review, it evolved into an actual primer. So you might be asking yourself, what is a primer? They are peer-reviewed living documents that detail a specific subject, disciplinary area, or curation task, and that can be used as a reference to curate research data. The DCN created several of these in the past with various topics like oral history interviews and qualitative data. The scope of this primer was to provide a resource for academic researchers to reference during planning, implementation, and the closing phases of their research project. It addresses key aspects of data curation that can be implemented by a researcher and the research team during all stages of the research data lifecycle. As previously stated, the content for the primer was reviewed and selected from the DCN primers that already existed, and then modified to include language focused on researchers and a researcher audience. Feedback and clarification from my mentors was also included into the primer. It was really important for me to seek out this feedback because I knew that my limitation was that I was coming from a student researcher perspective, and they actually were in the field and had data creation experience. Some features of the Introduction to Research Data Management and Sharing primer. There are 4 main features of this primer that I want to touch on. The first 3 concern the 3 phases that a researcher goes through when conducting a research project. These are broken down into before, during, and end, or the planning, implementation, and closing phases. The planning phase begins with general considerations that the researcher should take into account and implement, such as the FAIR guiding principles and the CARE principles for Indigenous data governance. The section further delves into data management and curation principles, data management and sharing plans, and other elements like README files. The implementation phase, otherwise known as during, contains information about basic data management practices that should be considered during the research process. These include creating new versions of the data to keep the original version intact, reassessing data sharing plans, data access, and reviewing the DCN's curated checklist. Phase 3 is the closing phase, or when the project comes to an end. At this phase, the primer guides the researcher through considerations to prepare their data for future reuse. Some points discussed in this section include data integrity, documentation, and quality control. And the last feature I will touch on is the resource table at the end of the primer. It's a non-exhaustive list of tools and resources considered helpful for data curation. This table was an amalgamation of the many resources that I was coming across as both a student and an intern that were pertinent to the primer and I considered helpful for researchers. So the next steps, the primer is now ready to be uploaded to the DCN's GitHub repository. So I will be working on that. And then my reflection. So looking back at my goal was to participate in a project that let me follow and learn about the data lifecycle. I do feel like I achieved my goal and beyond. Some key takeaways were that data management can be broken down into 3 phases for researchers to review as they go. I also learned that data management is iterative, and while the process seems linear, some of the steps can happen at different times or multiple times throughout the research project. My personal takeaways involved gaining more knowledge about SQL, Python, GitHub, also getting hands-on experience with the peer review process and professional presentations. I also was able to build community with my peers, my mentors, and data service professionals. These are my sources. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Maria, and all of our presenters. We have about 10 minutes left for Q&A, so please feel free to think of questions and ask them in the chat. Okay, while we're at time, it is 2:15 Eastern. Thank you to our audience. Thank you to my co-presenters for participating in this session. We'll see you at the poster session, which is next. Please note there is a new Zoom link for the next session, and you can find it in the HUVA agenda. Thanks, everybody. Take care.